Between the 8th and 13th centuries, the cities of the early Islamic Empire generated an explosion of cross-disciplinary science. They built massive astronomical observatories and cultivated intellectual output on a scale the world had never recorded. Scholars in these hubs mastered and advanced entirely distinct fields simultaneously. They codified advanced optics, mapped heliocentric planetary models, and dissected dense metaphysics. Yet this level of scientific synthesis presents a historical paradox. To achieve these breakthroughs, researchers required raw, specialized data from completely disparate cultures, specifically Greek philosophical texts, Indian mathematics, and Persian administrative records. Prior to this era, the world was deeply fractured. Warring empires maintained strict geographic zones and rigid borders, keeping the Byzantine, Persian, and Indian territories heavily isolated from one another. How did an emergent faith, starting in the harsh environment of the Arabian Peninsula, manage to connect these fiercely isolated zones and construct the most advanced scientific network of the medieval world? The traditional historical narrative assumes this spread of knowledge was a direct byproduct of military expansion, conquest by the sword, forcing the assimilation of local cultures. This intellectual revolution developed as the downstream dividend of a deliberate socio-political strategy known as concord. The mechanics of this strategy suggest that scientific leaps are products of specific administrative conditions, where inclusion provides the engine for data aggregation. To see the results of this strategy, we must examine the polymaths. These were individual scholars operating across multiple, highly complex disciplines at the exact same time. Look at Ibn al-Haytham's hand-drawn anatomical diagram. He mapped the eye's structure and labeled the optic nerves. The surrounding text shows he used these findings to establish a rigorous difference between physical perception and actual knowledge. Then there was Abu Rayhan al-Biruni, who focused his intellect upward, targeting the mechanics of the solar system. This geometric diagram shows his calculations. By mapping the intersecting red lines between the sun and the phases of the moon, al-Biruni successfully established a heliocentric model and proved that the Earth rotates on an axis. In the realm of pure philosophy, polymaths like Ibn Sina, known in the West as Avicenna, set out to tackle the densest texts of ancient Greek thought. He struggled intensely with this ancient Greek text, Aristotle's Metaphysics. Ibn Sina famously reported reading the volume 40 times over, unable to successfully comprehend its contents. The text became clear only after he purchased a commentary by Abu Nasr al-Farabi at a local market. Integrating this second perspective provided the framework necessary to parse Aristotle's logic. These individual breakthroughs share a common denominator. They required a massive, continuous influx of raw materials and data sourced from far outside the borders of the Islamic world. Compiling their medical treatises meant sourcing highly specific botanical imports, requiring steady shipments of lemongrass, myrtle seeds, and spikenard. We can see this physical influx here. This narrow wooden strip contains ancient Indian script, the direct medium required to import non-Western, non-Arabic scientific data directly to the desks of these researchers. The dense, cross-disciplinary, multilingual data aggregation happening in single cities is a historical anomaly. It proves the existence of a highly unified, globalized knowledge infrastructure. So, what geopolitical events had to occur for Ibn Sina to access Greek philosophy and Indian botany at the exact same local bookstall? The primary macro-geopolitical opportunity was the sudden, chaotic collapse of the established superpowers that had previously locked down the region. Look at this silver ancient coin featuring a bearded Persian ruler. It represents the wealth and entrenched power of the Sassanid Empire. The fragmentation of this regime physically dismantled the old rigid borders. As the Sassanid Empire fragmented, Islamic forces pushed rapidly outward, absorbing those fractured Persian zones. But taking territory isn't the same as connecting it. Internal trade and communication routes had to be established and secured to allow information to flow. The first critical example of political integration over mere subjugation was the early alliance formed with the dominant Quraysh elite in Mecca. A shattered empire provides territory, but you cannot sustain a unified knowledge economy by force alone. Military conquest only opened the door for a deeper administrative strategy. Zooming in on Medina reveals the exact statecraft early Islamic leaders used to secure vast territory. They utilized concord, a deliberate tactical alliance and integration of indigenous populations, purposely avoiding any forced conversion or exclusion. The triumph of early Islam relied heavily on the active, structured support of existing Christian communities living within the conquered territories. Above all, the most vital strategic and administrative support came from deeply established Jewish communities. This strategy was codified in the Constitution of Medina. This stylized graphic highlights the specific clauses of that document, guaranteeing interfaith cooperation and mutual defense. It formally defined relationships across the territory, successfully binding completely diverse religious groups into a single cohesive socio-political framework. By doing this, the early Islamic State bypassed building a massive new administration from scratch. Through the active protection of these groups, the new state seamlessly absorbed the pre-existing intellectual and administrative frameworks of the Mediterranean and Persian worlds. This was a brilliant solution to a systems integration problem. By legalizing diversity through the Constitution of Medina, they ensured that the scribes, translators, and merchants of the old empires became the willing engines of the new one. We now see a newly unified Islamic world, spanning from Spain to India, integrating Jewish, Christian, and Quraysh communities. These formed the nodes of an unprecedented secure trade network. A dense, glowing web of commerce flowed directly into central hubs like Baghdad and Medina. This is the exact network that carried the physical materials needed by the polymaths. Indian botanicals and ancient Greek texts traveled thousands of miles along these protected interfaith routes. The downstream dividends of this supply chain are precisely the scientific leaps we observed earlier: Ibn al-Haytham's optics, Al-Biruni's heliocentrism, and Avicenna's mastery of Aristotle. Islamic administration focused on capturing and connecting these disparate intellectual supply chains. The historical evidence suggests that while military force acquires territory, only legal integration preserves the underlying intellectual capital. The medieval Islamic scientific revolution functioned as the direct result of the geopolitical strategy of concord.